Commissioner Chatterley,
Present.
Commissioner Giacomo, Commissioner Chavez.
Present. Would you all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Couple of announcements. Next meeting will be Tuesday, September 28th, 2021, 6 p.m. here in the chambers. Items from citizens present, seeing no one here, we will move on to item 6A. Deliberate and act on approval of minutes for regular meeting held on August 24th, 2021. They were in your packet. Should have had time to go over them.
So no blatant errors, I'll move to approve. I'll second.
Motion and a second to approve the minutes as presented. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item B, deliberate and act on Colfax Ale Cellar Private Celebration Permit Application for professional conference reception at the Raton Museum on September 30th. Mr. Berry.
Yes, Mayor and Commission, you see the documentation in your packet for the celebration permit application. It's something that the state will act on, but it requires the concurrence of the City Commission. This is related to a conference that will be in town, the New Mexico Watershed and Dam Owners Coalition. They'll be here the end of September and the 1st of October for about 3 days, about a 100-person convention. Karen Stearns from Engineering Analytics is very active in that group, and she's worked for a couple of years to bring that group, that convention to Raton, and done a good job in getting them here. So we're excited about that. They will have a social at the museum on the night of September 30th, so the permit is related to that.
Alrighty, any questions for Mr. Berry?
No, but I think we owe Karen Stearns thank you for working so hard on this.
Absolutely.
I will move to approve.
All second.
A motion and a second to approve the celebration permit application for the Dam Owners Conference. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item C, deliberate and act on event form for homecoming parade on September 24th. Mr. Berry.
Mayor and Commission, you will also have the documentation for the homecoming parade in your packet. That's a public event that is reviewed by Emergency Services and our Public Works Department to take care of any concerns with public safety or with traffic control. They've gone through the process and been approved by all the appropriate personnel, and you have a recommendation in favor of your approval of the event. There will be street blockage for a period there, of course. We will have it on 1st Street in the new Big Blocks project area. We're pretty proud of that. It's an event that we're familiar with. We've had it many times before, and so we have a recommendation for approval.
Okay. Any questions or comments?
I'll make a motion to approve.
A motion and a second to approve the event form for the homecoming parade on September 24th. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item D, deliberate and act on Resolution 2021-54, adopting the fiscal year 23-27 Infrastructure Capital Improvement Plan, otherwise known as ICIP. Mr. Berry.
Mayor and Commission, this is an item that we started talking about here at Commission meetings back in July, I believe, and we invited public comment, and this is to establish the priorities for the community of Raton in the area of infrastructure capital improvements over the next 5-year period. Now, you see the fiscal year 23 through 27 on the plan, so that actually would be next year, 22-23 through 26-27. And the change that we have had from last year's ICIP to this one, we have modified some of the priorities, some of the places that we placed ongoing infrastructure. There are some projects that are complete, nearly complete, or funded, and we've reflected that in changes in the plan. There also have been 4 or 5 items that have come onto the plan, but it looks familiar with previous years. And so we've talked about these items in our public hearings and in our discussions previously. We've got some information related to this, such as the information given to us by the chairman of Legislative Finance Committee, Senator Munoz, at the annual convention, and we try to take all that information and compile it in the plan that you see here. Now, generally, we would ask for the Commission's adoption of the plan here tonight. It is a requirement that we would submit this to Department of Finance Administration by the end of business on Friday the 17th. And so upon your adoption and approval, we would enter the data into the DFA database. That's a little bit of a chore. You do have the opportunity to make final comments on the ICIP, move things around or adjust things as you see fit. I'll give you a quick recap of what we did list in the priorities, and we moved Lake Maloya Dam safety improvements up to the #1 rank. And you see a very large number there when we talk about the total project cost. That's reflective of engineering that we've been working on for a number of years here. We do have a proposed phase 1 that consists of spillway improvements, and we've listed $10 million in the 22-23 fiscal year. The mayor did participate in a conference with some state officials and other mayors, and particularly I think the governor, that said, generally I think, the mayor, not to put words in your mouth, but generally I think the communication was the state of New Mexico budget is fairly healthy currently, and the legislature and the governor I think are looking at investing in infrastructure like water, wastewater, and dams. So Mayor, I'll hold up there and let you make a comment on that.
That's exactly right, that, and then along with internet, those were the big things, especially anything dealing with water, wastewater, and dams. Yeah.
So we have a mechanism of funding water improvements. As a matter of fact, Water Department is very close to proceeding on improvements to the Cimarron pipeline system. We would finance that, but pay the debt service through our increment dedicated to capital improvements in water. We will have some wastewater improvements coming up in future years. There is a capital improvement fund in the utilities for that, but we would probably look for some grant money on that when that project comes up. And so right now it seems like it's timely for the dam project. And so that's something that we have submitted for review to the state engineer office. And they're going through the review process now. And as we've been told, shovel ready is still, you know, a favorable term. I wonder about that term sometimes, but we have a high degree of readiness on the Lake Maloya Dam improvements. I've listed Bartlett Mesa Ranch acquisition. That's something that we've talked about for the past year, really since the establishment of Fisher Peak State Park in Colorado, and in general, expanding Sugar Creek Canyon State Park and creating really one large outdoor recreation attraction in the area. So I've listed that as a high priority. Last year, we did talk about, well, I'm skipping over the evidence storage building, but evidence storage, we do store some evidence that is related to a legal case here and there in the Armex building. I can tell you that the economic development project is proceeding on schedule for the Armex building. We still have a little time, but ultimately we'd like to see jobs created there and production, and that's going to leave us looking for a place to store not only evidence that the police may be holding pending a case, but also some equipment from police, fire, emergency services, and public works. So I put that on the list. That's a new item, and I listed a number of $1.5 million would take care of that in one project. Drainage and storm drainage improvements. We chipped away at the old storm drainage in the downtown area, the subsurface drainage. We've got some improvements going now with our current 3rd Street project. However, that was ignored for many years, and the need is pretty extensive. I've listed that at number 4. In addition to the downtown storm drainage area, we're really starting to see the need for improvements to our WPA channel system throughout town. That's extensive. We have done very minimal improvements to that. It's performed well, but the day will come when we need a lot more work on that. A document storage facility, this is something we talked about last year for you commissioners that have been around City Hall. We generate a lot of documents, scanning, most of those would be an answer for us, but we are required to maintain possession of certain documents for a period of time, so we'll need storage in addition to that. So there are really 2 items there. We listed public works equipment. What we would anticipate there is we need to start replacing some of our solid waste equipment. We have really hit the enterprise fund pretty hard with the construction of the transfer station, with the closure of the landfill, and some other things, providing some new dumpsters. And so we would look for capital outlay maybe on as one item under public works. We would look at replacement of some of the equipment that has become obsolete. So in the past 5 years, we've done a good job of upgrading public works. We have certain pieces of equipment, though, that we would include if we were funded on this item as well. But we're in much better shape on that than we were 5 years ago. And then I've included police equipment, and it's really the same story there. We've done a little bit every year over 3 or 4 or 5 years. We're a lot better than we were 5 years ago. There still are some needs on police equipment. Largely, we're talking about communications, data storage, radios and cameras is what we would focus on if we were funded on that. And then lastly, in the current year, I've listed airport apron reconstruction. Generally, we would fund projects at our airport under the FAA's AIP system. However, information given to us at the annual conference was that the legislature would allocate funding for airport improvements throughout New Mexico. And so we've listed it here as a priority. Certainly we have needs at Raton Municipal Airport, and so we've listed apron reconstruction as our need. Mayor Commission, that is the 23 list, and then you go through the subsequent years. You can see the ranking of projects for those years, but I will hold up there and answer any questions that you might have.
All righty, thank you. Any questions or comments from Mr. Berry?
No?
Very good list.
I think it's a good move to move the ones that you moved up to the head of the list. I do.
They were very specific at the conference, saying, if you want to spend, this is the year to spend. Don't be shy.
That's good.
So we'll see what happens. All right, I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to adopt resolution 2021-54 for the ICIP plan.
A motion and a second to adopt resolution 2021-54. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. And Michael Ann, if I could, after this is signed, if I could get a copy scanned to me so I can send with my ICIP.
Yes,
I would
definitely.
appreciate it, thank you. Item E, deliberate and act on grant agreement A20E5219 between the City of Raton and Aging and Long-Term Services Department for Senior Center kitchen renovation. Mr. Berry.
Mayor and Commission, in your packet you have an agreement from Aging and Long-Term Services for the consideration by the City of Raton related to Fund 89200 capital appropriations. Under this agreement, $165,000 has been allocated for renovations to the Raton Senior Center in Colfax County. And so generally, Mayor, I understand that this is going to be directed at kitchen improvements, but I'll maybe call on you for some specifics on the
Okay.
project.
Yeah, this is basically to remodel our kitchen. The current walk-in cooler is approaching 20 years old. The floor is rotting out in it. So we would replace the walk-in cooler and in addition add a walk-in freezer. That's the main focus of this upgrade, as well as the dishwashing area, the scullery area. We want to replace the dishwasher there and possibly do some rearranging to make it a little more convenient for everyone in that. So that's what we are looking to do at this time.
Mayor, Commission, upon your consideration of the agreement, you can see that Aging Long-Term has executed the agreement. At this point, if we sign that, send it back, we'll be in a position to proceed rather quickly with the design and the work.
Yeah, and I believe Mr. Little has already done some preliminary design work on it. We just need to kind of finish it up and see where we can go from there.
Send it.
Okay. I will move to approve grant agreement A20E5219 between City of Raton and Aging and Long-Term Services Department for Senior Center Kitchen renovation, and allowing Mr. Berry to sign it.
I'll second.
Well, motion and a second to accept the grant agreement between City of Raton and Aging Long-Term Services. Is there any further discussion? Before voting, I will abstain from this vote. So, that being said, all in favor, vote by sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item F, deliberate and act on award of RFP and subcontract to provide direct youth services for restorative justice. Mr. Berry.
Mayor and Commission, I'm going to call on the city clerk to make comments on here, but just a general overview. This is related to the replacement of a subcontractor that under the juvenile justice grant has provided services related to restorative justice. And so we did lose an individual that acted as a subcontractor. I think Michael Ann has worked with the group to issue a request for proposals for that, and does have a recommendation to you for the highest scoring responsive proposer. That's HRDA Incorporated, to continue providing those services in the area of restorative justice. Michael Ann, got anything to add?
Mayor and Commission, as City Manager Barry stated, we did lose our current subcontractor. That was Peace Through Education. They've relocated to Santa Fe. And so upon receiving formal notice of that, we did issue another RFP. We received 2 proposals, and so we did have a committee that consisted of the City of Raton's JJAC board, who sat on that committee and reviewed the 2 proposals. And so based on their scoring and recommendation, we're recommending to you this evening that subcontract be awarded to HRDA Inc., Human Resources Development Associates. They also, you'll recall, are our current subcontractor for the Girls Circle and the Boys Council. They previously had provided these services, I believe, in 2017, 2018, after Valle del Sol left Raton. So they do have experience in restorative justice as well. So our recommendation this evening would be to approve the RFP award to them, and then also have attached a copy of the subcontract agreement. So our approval this evening is still contingent upon obtaining final approval from Children, Youth, and Families Division, because that's where we receive the grant monies from that agency. So once we receive those approvals, then they would be able to start providing the services.
Alrighty, any questions for Michael Ann?
I'll make a motion to approve the award of the RFP to HRDA and the subcontract to provide direct youth services for restorative justice.
Got a motion and a second to approve the award of the RFP.
If I could just make one more comment. You'll also recall that this past year when we were awarded the grant, CYFD did make a change and awarded the funding for 4 years. So every year we'll execute a new agreement with CYFD, so they would be completing this fiscal year's contract, and then they would be up for 2 potential renewals through June of 2024.
Okay.
So we would bring these back to you again probably in June for approval of the next fiscal year.
Any other comments, questions? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item G, deliberate and act on approval of mediation settlement agreement, settlement amount and contingent fee on behalf of the city of Raton, number D-202-CV-2018-08036. Mr. Barry.
Mayor and Commission, this agreement is brought to you related to the legal action that you referenced, generally as labeled City of Albuquerque and others versus Stephanie Chardon Clark and the New Mexico Taxation and Revenue Department. So this has been an issue that was originally filed in 2018. The City of Raton and the City Commission did join the lawsuit. We're one of 44 plaintiffs that had a claim against New Mexico Tax and Rev. By the way, Stephanie Chardon Clark is the Cabinet Secretary. There's why she is named. And I'll talk briefly about the mediation settlement agreement. So this is an agreement that, as implied, comes about through mediation. And so Judge Bustamante was retained as the mediator. Both sides have been involved in mediation for many months, been back and forth, and this is generally the agreement that the state and the 44 plaintiffs have agreed to, and it comes to you tonight for your consideration. Generally, for this to be effective, all 44 plaintiffs would have to agree to the settlement. As you see from the press announcement, the state has agreed to pay the plaintiffs $50 million related to the claim, and I'll talk a little bit about the claim as we go along. And Raton is a relatively small player in this, so you can see in the agreement what you would be agreeing to is a part of that payment that would amount to $53,214.12. That's the gross amount of the settlement agreement that will be allocated to Raton. However, there is a contingency fee that we did agree to that would go to our attorneys. That's Gallagher and Kennedy, PA, and that would bring the net recovery for the city of Raton down to $47,443.72. That's basically what you would agree to in your consideration of the mediation settlement agreement. However, there is an additional component. You are being asked to forego any additional claims against New Mexico Taxation and Revenue prior to May 31st, 2021. I don't know of any claims that the city of Raton would bring. However, by your consideration of the agreement, you would agree to not bring additional claims and hold them harmless. Now, after May 31st of 2021, that's not covered by the agreement, but you're really agreeing to two things here. Now, just to talk about the nature of the claim, and I'll try to be as brief as I can. Municipalities, as we've talked about, largely rely on New Mexico gross receipts tax as our primary revenue source. And then we also get a little bit of property tax. This case is related to the distribution of gross receipts taxes. Counties primarily rely on property tax. However, they generally get a little bit of GRT as well. So of the 44 plaintiffs, there is a mix of municipalities and county governments in that. And the $50 million was a nice round number, and we have to figure out how to split that up amongst the 44 plaintiffs. Now, how gross receipts taxes work is generally in New Mexico, They're collected on many transactions of goods and services, not just what you buy down at the store, but for example, when the city of Raton is doing construction, as we are on 3rd Street, we pay New Mexico gross receipts taxes. So the contractor or the business would collect those taxes. They would remit that to the state, taxation and revenue, and then taxation and revenue would distribute back that portion that is due to the municipality or to the county government. And so there is statute on how this is accomplished. You as a city have some decisions that you can make on different increments of GRT and set the GRT to some extent. But the payments are made to tax and rev, what the lawsuit calls the department. And so the department acts as a fiduciary for the cities and counties. Their duties are ministerial, meaning that the department has no discretion to disregard the requirements of the act that the legislature has implemented. And we'll get to the crux of the matter here, that when a business pays their gross receipts tax, occasionally there could be a mistake or an error made in that, and the business could file an amended GRT return seeking a refund. And so this has happened. It has specifically happened in cases, say, like a municipality that's located next to the oil field, where things are happening kind of in a chaotic and quick manner. So if a lot of businesses come in because the oil field is going up, they may be located in the county, or they may be located in the city. They may charge a certain GRT on what they're doing and then realize later on that they've made an error and seek a refund. So historically, the department then, if they approve the revision, the refund, they would take that away from the local government. And in some cases, it was a very large amount of money that then cripples local government. So there's been previous litigation in regard to this, specifically the town of Eunice versus the state of New Mexico, in which the Supreme Court in New Mexico ruled in favor of the town of Eunice because the refund was punitive to local government. Then subsequently there was additional legislation in 2015 that talked about some of the rules and the access to the information by local government, which up until that time had been denied by tax and rev. And so this has continued up until the present time, where the plaintiffs felt like they had got an unfair distribution. They were shortchanged basically by tax and rev, and they were not provided the information that they needed to make the calculations or make a timely response to tax and rev's actions. And so that's the crux of the case, has to do with this refund basically that has been made, and there's been some pretty large dollars to some of these plaintiffs. I would suggest that Raton had received information over the years that we were owed money. However, a lot of this, the situation that we're talking about, probably doesn't really directly impact Raton. We're not one of those oil field kind of municipalities, or the metro area where this would be common. So that's why we're a relatively small piece of this settlement, roughly about 1%. And my recommendation to you would be approval of the settlement agreement and the foregoing of any additional claims against tax and rev. Our staff, we do everything we can do to kind of track that GRT distribution. Obviously, tax and rev over the years admits in this settlement that they were not fair or following the statute and how they were doing that, and hopefully that's corrected now, and we'll we'll have, number one, have access to more information and be able to question tax and rev if we have a question, and get that, and have a little more trust in them going forward. So I'll hold up there, Mayor.
All righty. Any questions or comments from Mr. Barry?
Personally, I think it's time that they get the transparency that they've lacked for so long now, and it looks like this will do it.
Yeah.
And it's free money, basically.
Free money. I would like to see a little more of what we
That's what
would
we
do,
got.
but,
Yeah.
it's still,
I think
to,
we,
to get everybody to agree on it.
yeah, I think the team here has done due diligence and worked with the lawyers sufficiently to know that we're getting probably the best deal we can.
I can tell you that there was some modeling done by Tax and Rev and provided to our attorneys, and our attorneys did probably a little not as detailed modeling, and basically concurred with the Tax and Rev calculation, but it's very complicated. It goes back many years. There was an issue of the timeliness of the claim because it does go back so many years, and so that reduced the settlement. The fact that this is goes back so far, I think back to 2004, and so the issue that a defendant would make is, you should have brought this up back when it happened. Now the plaintiffs would say, you didn't give us access to the information, we really couldn't do that. And so it's a complicated issue. We're taking them on faith on the dollars, but I'm going by the recommendations of our attorneys and the mediator, and the mediator had said, I think this is a good settlement. If it came to my court, I would definitely look at that timeliness response and reduce it based on that. But I would recommend it as a good settlement for the city of Raton.
I'll make the motion to approve mediation settlement agreement settlement.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept the mediation settlement agreement between City of Raton and Taxation and Revenue Department. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item H, City Treasurer Report on Fiscal Year 2022. Final budget approval from Department of Finance and Administration for City of Raton, Raton Waterworks, and Raton Public Service. Fran or Scott?
Mayor and Commission, in your packet is a copy of the letter from the Department of Finance approving the city's FY22 budget. At our last meeting, we did approve a correction to reduce the allocation from our American Recovery Grant to the 50% that'll be distributed in this fiscal year, and then the remaining 50% will be in the next fiscal year. So we've made the correction. We've been granted an approval letter, so with this approval, anything moving forward would need to be adjusted through budget adjustments. I've also provided you a copy of the budget approval letter for the Raton Public Service, and we did have email correspondence with the Raton Waterworks financial analyst. Geneva had contacted him to follow up on their letter. Their budget's been approved. It was just awaiting signatures. So as soon as we get a copy of the letter, I'll provide you with a copy in your box. But they did confirm that theirs has been approved as well. So as a requirement, you'll see it does say that budgets approved by local government division are required to be made a part of the minutes of your governing body in compliance with section 6-6-5. So that's my report this evening, and we can officially record that in the minutes.
All righty, thank you. Any questions or comments for Michael Land?
I will move to approve.
We don't really need to
Oh,
approve.
we don't need to?
No, just, she reported, so it becomes part of the minutes.
Very good.
Very good, though. We're on top of it. All right. Item I, deliberate and act on resolution 2021-55, budget adjustment number 1, fiscal year 2022. Michael Land?
Mayor and Commissions. So now we have an approved budget, and we've got our first budget adjustment request. So the end of September will be the end of the first quarter. So as we've been using the budget since July, we've found that we've got several projects that we're working on that we need to include within the budget that were not included in that final budget. One of those being utilizing some salary savings from the police department is the purchase of some new body armor, and that would be utilizing a state price agreement, and the amount of that is $10,176. Also, I'm requesting to do some temporary budget adjustments. We will be starting construction on the depot parking lot project, and also the CDBG project has started. And so as those pay requests come in, we're going to need to be able to cut the checks to the vendors and then provide our funding agency with a canceled check in order to get reimbursements. So we're going to have to front the money for those projects, and then once we've closed out these projects, we will reimburse the general fund. So I'm requesting those temporary transfers. And then also we received our letter from the state fire marshal on our distribution for FY22, and it's slightly less than what we had estimated. So I'm just requesting that we make that adjustment to reflect the actual amount of the state fire allotment for FY22. Other than that, we are trying to wrap up the solid waste transfer station as well. This will not be a temporary transfer, but we're looking to transfer additional funds to finish the fencing, security. There's an electric change order, some expenses related to getting an office building, and also the registration costs of that facility. So hopefully we may not need to use all of those funds, but hopefully, I believe City Manager Berry stated that facility could be open as soon as November. So other than that, that's my request this evening. Is there any questions?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2021-55, budget adjustment number 1, fiscal year 22.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt resolution number 2021-55. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item J, City Manager Report. Mr. Berry, you've already reported, haven't you?
Well, I've talked a lot tonight, so just a few more items here, but I would advise the public that on our 3rd Street project, our CDBG project, there is work going on in the area of the post office, and that's a facility that a lot of people go to on a daily basis. And so just a word of caution to look out for construction activities in the area of the post office on Park Avenue and 3rd Street. That's going to be going on for a little bit. I would advise you that I did participate in a airport capital improvement plan discussion with Federal Aviation Administration and State Aviation. And during that, we did agree to our 5-year priorities for the airport. Generally consists of the reconstruction of taxiway Bravo, the reconstruction of our crosswind runway 725. I'm sorry, not the reconstruction of that, but the reconstruction of runway lighting on 725, a medium intensity runway lighting, and then apron reconstruction. And we did reflect the apron reconstruction in our ICIP as well, and this is a similar process. So we have several projects going at the airport. We are currently requesting bids for construction of our airport hangar. That's something that we've talked about for a while now. We've completed design. We would move quickly into construction and try to have that done by springtime. We have added some new staff, I think, following our comprehensive planning effort and some of the impacts related to some of the impacts of COVID-19 over the last year and a half. We've done a little minor reorganization. And so related to that would be the establishment of a position, the Community Facilities Manager. I think most of you have met our new manager, that's Jolene Green. She's joined us here about a week ago, and she's going to help us, I think, significantly with some of the more important things that we've got going in the city of Raton. So Jolene comes to us after serving as the administrator of long-term care for Miners Colfax Medical Center. She's got extensive managerial experience there and administrative experience, and that's something that we really need with everything going on in the city. Also, I would announce to the commission and to the public that we have hired a full-time code enforcement officer. George Riley will join the city of Raton next week as code enforcement officer. The issue with code enforcement has generally been that it's been a part of someone else's job, just a piece of that, and we've in recent years had that in the fire department. So we've really seen significant impacts with fire and emergency services during this COVID period over the year and a half. We've lost one key position there, and so as a response to that, we've moved code enforcement out of fire, moved it back to City Hall here. Mr. Riley will be focusing exclusively on code enforcement. We recognize that we got a lot to do out there in the community. We got our work cut out for us. We'll have to prioritize some of the biggest needs, but Mr. Riley will start with us and get going on that next week. So that's what I have, Mayor.
All righty, thank you, Mr. Berry. Short and sweet. Is there any additional items to be brought for discussion? Commissioner Chatterley,
I don't have anything.
Commissioner Giacomo,
No, sir.
Commissioner Chavez, Mayor Pro Tem.
Well, I would like to mention that, thank you to the Works Department, and we have a free little library now posted at, we gave it an address, 101 Park Avenue, which means it's right there on the corner of Park and First. If you have books, especially for kids books that you want to drop off and put in that little library that people who need books can go just pick up. It's an exchange, free, and it's already registered on the map. If you go to Free Little Library Maps, it'll be there. And Mr. Jason Phillips helped name it. It's called the Great Little Library
Nice.
because it faces the Great Blocksboro.
Sure. Cool. All right, just a couple comments. One, great thanks to Raton Main Street and the staff and everybody involved for the Gate City Music Fest and that entire weekend. It was phenomenal. Enjoyed it all. Concert was great. The activities were great. So many kudos out to those involved in that. And then number two, I guess the Mayor Pro Tem and I will be attending advanced Molly training in Santa Fe the rest of this week. So
Thursday and Friday.
yeah. All righty.
We'll be there.
That's all I have. This meeting is thereby adjourned.